Welcome back to Hilaal Live. Jazakallah so much for staying with us. Now, due to prolonged delays in Unit 1's return, the minister in the presidency responsible for electricity, Dr. Hossein Ramokgopa, is concerned about the Koeberg nuclear power plant station. Ramokgopa said despite visiting the power plant in person to examine it, he knew nothing further about the situation when he briefed the media in Pretoria yesterday on the progress his department was making in implementing the Energy Action Plan. Joining us now to discuss this is energy activist Peter Becker. Mr. Becker, good evening, and thank you so much for joining us on Hilaal Live.
Good to be with you, and it's Peter Becker, by the way.
Yeah, Mr. Becker, I wanted to ask this over here. The concerns regarding Koeberg, I mean, how deep are they? And how concerned should citizens of South Africa actually be?
Well, I think the biggest problem is a lack of transparency. And we've been trying to do this for a long time as a civil society, is get information out of Eskom about Koeberg. But generally, there's a veil of secrecy. So it was no surprise, really, to hear that our Minister for Electricity said he was none the wiser. Despite visiting the plant and receiving a long presentation, he still doesn't know what the cause for the delays are. So I think there's been a lot of secrecy and a lack of transparency around Koeberg, and that by itself is concerning. And that's for two reasons. Firstly, we don't really know what work is being done. We don't know what's caused these delays. We don't know if there's a cause for concern behind them. And the second one is financial. How much is this costing Eskom? And who's going to pay for that in the end? And we know the answer to the second part of that. It'll be the electricity consumer who pays for it in the end. But the cost of this refurbishment must have at least doubled, tripled, or quadrupled from what the original estimates were because of the amount of time that it's actually taking.
Who's misleading who here? Is it the management of that power station misleading Dr. Ramokgopa, or is it Eskom as a whole misleading Dr. Ramokgopa? Because there just seems to be a sense of miscommunication between three different parties right here.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question and one that really needs to be looked into. And it's always a mistake to take an entity such as Eskom and treat it as a single monolithic thing. Any organization is made up of a lot of people, and no doubt there are disagreements and there are different factions within those organizations. So I think what is clear is at the highest level, Eskom is not informed about what is going on. And I think that applied to the recently departed CEO, Andre de Ruyter. It possibly applied to Jan Oberhauser, who was put in charge of Koeberg and then left very recently. And it seems that goes all the way now, because even at the ministerial level, when he visits the plant, he is still not given the correct information. So it's a deep concern, and we don't really know where that is coming from. But it seems now that a forensic investigation is being launched into the delays and into the cost overruns. So hopefully we're going to get some answers to that relatively soon.
The concerns over nuclear is there. I mean, there's so many organizations that are anti-nuclear, some that are for nuclear. In terms of nuclear and its future in South Africa, and us slowly but surely moving into the renewable space, how much of a role will nuclear play in the energy and the future of it within this country?
So my view of that is we've got technologies that are going to be there as part of the solution in the future, and we have technologies that were part of the solution in the past. And it's very clear that the renewable technology, that solar, wind, and storage facilities are very much part of the future, whereas large coal plants and nuclear plants are very much a thing of the past. So we in South Africa are blessed with some of the best solar radiation in the world, and we also have excellent wind resources up and down the coast of the country. So to me, that is the future of the country. If we also look at timing, a nuclear plant typically takes something 10 to 15 years to build. I think the record is 42 years and still ongoing. So that's not a quick fix solution. We don't need to start a project now and commit a vast amount of capital to a project while we make a guess what the needs of the country will be in 10 or 15 years' time. Whereas if you look at a wind turbine or a solar plant, they're really quick to put up, from first bulldozer to actually producing electricity can be as quick as 6 months. And that means that is the way not only to address our electricity crisis and the load shedding crisis in the medium term, but it's also the way to address climate change and emissions.
The will obviously has to come from the top, and that's government. And you've got different factions within the governing party right now saying, well, coal has to be kept. We then need to make that shift to renewables. You've got the president, the head of the country, Cyril Ramaphosa, saying that renewables has to happen. With all of these contradictions from these various ministers and people within power, I mean, the future still looks bleak with regards to energy security in South Africa, doesn't it?
Yeah, so I think it's all about a time frame. How long until we'll be out of this load shedding crisis? The ludicrously optimistic point of view is that 6 months. By the end of the year, it'll all be over. And the very pessimistic view is maybe it'll take 5 years or even longer. I think realistically, we're looking at about 2 years because of the amount of focus now that is finally being put on producing new capacity and connecting that to the grid. It looks like about 2 years, this whole thing will be over. And that actually raises another very interesting question. Why are the Koeberg units being taken offline now when we need it the most in order to have them available from 2025 or 2026 onwards when we are likely not to need them? Remember that Koeberg only produces about 5% of the national nominal capacity. So it's really been a very strange decision from Eskom to do this. And that's one of the reasons why we need far more transparency. And there's also a question mark now. Unit 2 is due next for the refurbishment outage. And that's going to be 7 months, 8 months. It keeps slipping on Unit 1, so we don't know how long that'll be. So they're taking that unit, or they plan to take that unit offline at exactly the moment we need it most in order to have it running by the time we don't actually need it anymore.
Patrick, like you said, thank you so much for joining us here on Hilaal Live.
Thank you.
That's energy activist Patrick Becker there, giving us an outlook with regards to the Koeberg power plant station, of course, the nuclear station based in the Western Cape, and concerns with regards to that. After the break, I'll have your latest in news to stay tuned to Hilaal Live.